Right, Zach, it's an absolute pleasure to have you once again and be in discussion with you. As always, we have a amazing conversation and we dive into some amazing deep things and topics that matter, and that's the most important thing. Today, let's open up the human experience and the limitations of the human experience, particularly the limitations. What are some of the limitations of the human experience, and what are some of the universal laws that we have to adhere to on this journey that we call life?
I'm very pleased to be here today in Melbourne. It's my first, I guess, not even been 24 hours since I've been here. It's been a very long time since I've seen Sim. We were isolated from the pandemic. Of course, a lot of people who may know that the both of us travelled 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago now, from Lebanon overland to Poland. And we've decided to do a podcast series while I'm staying here. One, to really provide some value and topics that the people who are looking to expand their level of consciousness and awareness can digest. And also with a lot of people knowing that I'm moving on to writing my next two books, System 333 Prelude and then System 333 Archetypes and Intuitions, in which Sim actually plays the role of one of the main characters. It's a real story, true story, absolutely bonkers story. Sure, a few of these stories will come out over our videos, but this really is going to be a great topic today, the limitations of the human experience. And I'd like to kick it off by saying that, the human experience is something that's so vast, and everybody's human experience is individually different. The human experience as a concept is part of the three areas of System 333. And I put a lot of emphasis on the human experience specifically, especially when I write my book, when I've done my seminars, and even some of my videos, and I know you have too, Sim. When we talk about limitations, what type of limitations are we looking at in your eyes from what you see?
I think some of the limitations that I'm thinking about when I think about the human experience limitations, I think it's directly attached to my work, and that work would be a lot to do with the physical, emotional, and spiritual bodies. And I use the word bodies because we're encapsulated in a form that inherently encapsulates our level of consciousness. And the way I sort of see it is we are a biological structure which is erected because we stand upright, that is encapsulated by consciousness itself. And on this biological structure which is erect and encapsulates consciousness, we have a layer of the physical body, we have the layer of the emotional body, we have the layer of the spiritual body, and in between all that, we have the mind. And when I think of limitations of the human experience, the first thing that pops into my mind, there's a few, but the first thing that pops into my mind is the limitations of the physical body. Because the human body, and in its physicalness, because consciousness is unlimited, it is ever expanding, ever encapsulating. But to think about the human body in relation to pain, its need for food, its need for movement, its need for nurturing, touch, social interaction, which is also attached to also the emotional and spiritual bodies, is quite deep, and they have inherent limitations in relation to how we experience our human experience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and one thing is, and just to make sure we have our definitions, I guess, very clear for the audience, is that the human experience is the direct, so I would say direct, experience that an individual faces day to day, moment to moment, hour to hour, past, present, future is what the human experience is made of, right? Human experience encompasses particular events in the past, particular events in the now, right now, let me speak in here with you, and then of course in the future. So what is the human experience to come? And every single individual has a completely unique human experience. That's what makes you a human. That's what makes you. That's what makes you unique, right? So even if you had two twins born at the same time, minute apart, whatever, same household, same upbringing, they're going to have a completely different human experience. And I think that's a very interesting thing when we really conceptualize that. So why I saw the human experience as a pivotal aspect of System 333 is because of its uniqueness, and that whenever we step out into the world, we're living a new human experience every single day. So there are limitations set to this, which is what we'll be looking at. And I would like to first look at the one particular limitation which you spoke about, being a biologically erected, organism, right? For better lack of a term. There are certain limitations within your objective biology, and a lot of people will say, it's health, money and relationships, or there's all these different type of acronyms that people will use, but health always seems to appear in there, right? And I even spoke to one of my good friends a couple of weeks ago, who now basically he's mid-30s, but he's unable to be able to do the things he did because of back injury when he was 30. So when he was early 20s, just not the same person he used to be. And he says, it doesn't matter how much enlightenment you have, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have of conscious awareness, if you haven't got your health, you won't be able to do much. Let's break that down.
Yeah, so very interesting points that you bring up. And if we were to break down the physical aspect of the human experience and why it limits our direct and indirect human experiences in terms of richness of life, I think if we were to boil it down to one word, it would be something like a mixture of pain, which is the physical derivation of a limitation, which is inherent to us all. And it's one of the most things that feel the most real, right? When you experience pain, it's there, right? It's no denying it, no doubting it. It's fucking there. That pain is with you when you are experiencing it. Whether you are having some sort of inflammation response, or you have run your toe over on a car tire, or you've broken your arm, pain is there. It is real, it is there, it is with you, and it's limiting. So when you experience pain, inherently you are going to experience limitation. And there's all sorts of pain. There's physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. There's this collective unconscious and conscious pain that we experience through our ancestry. But if we were to boil it down to biological pain as a limitation, I would say that the experience of pain inherently is such a big limitation in how we thoroughly experience our human experience. But having said that, it is also, by overcoming pain, is the way that we enrich the human experience. And it is one of the main processes in relation to reaching this point of fulfillment in your life, because life encompasses so many layers of pain that we're going to experience, right? Whether it be emotional pain in terms of relationship breakups, whether it's going to be loss of family and friends in death and in terms of mortality, loss of health in terms of physical aspects. There's going to be so many things that are going to continually disrupt our human experience, but the overcoming and the process of growing and expanding through these, because like one of the most common sayings is pressure and chaos is what creates and what births, right? We come into this world being birthed through the vaginal canal through sheer pressure and force, and we come out almost like screaming in this contorted kind of way with like trying to gasp breath. Like it's this crazy amount of chaos that we encapsulate when we take in life, and that's inherently what life is. It's like coming out of the darkness into the light. And this is how I conceptualize life and pain. And yes, pain is an inherent limitation, but it's yin and yang. It's like they go together because it's inherently also the thing that gives you the richness of life, which is something I want to talk to you about later on. What does rich mean? What does richness mean in life?
Yeah, there's a lot to cover in this topic. But when you speak about the childbirth, right? If you actually look at the book of Genesis, when in the Bible, when God condemned Eve for sharing the apple with Adam, he punished her with the responsibility of childbearing and the pain that came with it, right? And then he said, he told Adam that he'd have to work every day of his life. He actually says you will eat food by the sweat of your brow, which metaphorically means you will have to work to eat, which is technically what people do now, right? Which is the reason you have to work. People go, why do we have to work? And that working actually, for people in the human experience, that actually is pain if they don't enjoy what they do. So, that even sets limitations on people and being able to do some of the things they'd want to do. So it's not saying not to work, it's just that as put in the book of Genesis, whether you'd like to believe it or not, this is just, using metaphors, analogies, historical texts. Pain has been there from the beginning. Pain has been there from the beginning. And it's been there as a result of us having to be born, having to be part of this human nature, this human experience, this actual physical body. And one thing I really started looking at, especially when I was thinking about the human experience and its vastness, was, can the human experience be exhausted? Because we know that, there comes a point in pain where you can take too much pain that you're just going to die, pretty much, right? And, there's I guess a lot of people are, have probably done stuff like walk on fire and all this stuff. I've seen quite a few crazy things. What's the craziest thing you've seen in terms of pain threshold and pain tolerance?
Oh man, there's been so many from like
what that you've seen, not maybe on TV, but maybe that you've seen live. Someone just been able to take, done something like walk on fire. Or
I've seen people walk on fire.
Yeah, I think you have.
I've seen that, and I've seen people like self-inflict pain, whether it will be from an unconscious perspective, whether it's like an emotional thing where they unconsciously continually inflict so much damage and pain to the life of themselves and other people, or whether it would be something like physical pain where someone will, even in like more of a trivial sense, someone will overtrain themselves, even at the gym, right? Or even physical exercise, like an addict.
So they become exhausted.
They become exhausted.
Exhaustion.
So exhaustion is a definite limitation of the human experience as well.
Exactly. And there's not too much that you can, do beyond that because of your biological nature, right? Which is, as Sim described, is what the very structure that erects us into this existence.
It seems as though pain is a very fundamental ingredient. So if you want to conceptualize it as suffering, right? So put pain, suffering as one big topic, right? Like suffering creates pain, right? And if you were to think about pain and suffering, I see it as it's a prerequisite ingredient into the creation of something which is enriching. And it's an obvious prerequisite in life, but it's a prerequisite in terms of something which is enriching. It's a part of the process that we need to confront willingly, and something that we need to confront on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, continually and perpetually, and get good at confronting it, or at least get good at the process of confronting it. Even though it may not seem you're good at the process of confronting it, you being on that process and growing and learning through the pain is becoming good at confronting it. And it's always going to be varied and different and changing. And pain is a monster of many faces. It will pop up, and pain will pop up in so many different shapes, forms, and in ways in your life that are sneaky, tricky, and hard to analyze and assess, and make you feel like your self-esteem has been diminished to zero, and make you feel incapable. But note and feel comfort in that is everyone's experience of pain. So you're not alone. Like the whole idea of being human is the collective and the tribe, and working together to overcome pain. And never forget that. That's why the tribe, your friends, your family, the people that you think of as the close acquaintances in your life are the fundamental part of your human experience, right? And they're the things that help you overcome the limitations of the human experience.
Absolutely. And I remember this quote, don't know who said it, but they say pain is weakness leaving the body, right? And I like to hold on to that philosophy. Now, back to just getting to what I was mentioning about exhausting the human experience, right? Because, of course, there comes a point of exhaustion, as Tim mentioned, even when you overtrain. Back when I was in Greece 2 years ago, I was sitting down and I was in a meditative state, and I just arrived in Santorini. It was the day after. It was the same day Gibbo did his cactus trip. Okay, very interesting time that I wrote this out. And this was a question I asked myself. Okay, question I ask myself about the limitations of travel and the limitations of the human experience. And the question I asked was, can you exhaust your human experience? So we know we can exhaust ourselves at the gym. We know we can exhaust ourselves doing a lot of other things. But what about the human experience? And this is what I wrote. I have it here on my phone, so you're probably wondering why I'm continually checking over my phone, just to make sure it doesn't get into lock mode. So from what I wrote, and I'll just quickly bring it out here. Based on the objective world, the human experience is limited to the confines of what is possible within the laws of nature. That's another topic for discussion. This also means that the brain's cognitive functions have a certain limit in processing the human experience, especially when considering the chemicals dopamine and serotonin. Part of our biological structure chemically, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Eventually, the human experience will have a cap in which they can process or experience novelty, even if it may vary, thus exhausting any further attempts to push beyond its limits. It may take centuries for the collective brain to adapt to processing new levels of human experiences. And the main reason, this is where it all comes down to your biological objective nature, chemically. The main reason for this is that the brain's chemicals that are activated are still the same, regardless of the human experience. Having these chemicals peak too much will just cause indifference for the novelty of new scenario, being desensitized, basically. So this is why, after a certain point, I asked myself, you're going to ask me why I wrote that at the time. Because I traveled that much at that period of time in my life that I asked myself, have I exhausted my human experience traveling? Because I'm just experiencing the same thing again and again, chemically. Not situationally, but biologically and chemically. My brain was releasing the same chemicals, and I was desensitized. So that's what I think that's a very interesting point that you bring up. Biology really has an impact on that.
Yeah, biology has a massive effect in it. And I think what you say is very profound and relevant. You can exhaust your human experience for sure. And I think it's complicated in the sense where at certain points you have certain thresholds which you can exhaust. For example, 3 years ago, if you did nothing but travel and lived a life of pure freedom, you can exhaust that level of reality. Then you will need to balance it out. If you look at Chinese philosophy or ancient Taoist philosophy, it's always about yin and yang. So if you go through a period of intense yang or intense yin, then you will need to bring it back and balance it with the opposite.
Correct.
So in that time and in that space, if you just travel, sit at cafes, have coffees, relax, eat ice creams, go on lots of dates, and just enjoy yourself purely for the pure pleasure and entertainment of life, then you will exhaust that reality for a period of time.
And you need to balance it out with some hard labor, which is what I did.
Yeah. Quite literally.
I love how you brought that up. And look, we are coming to the close of the video, but that's interesting because, again, it all comes down to duality. A lot of people wonder why I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see my shoes here, but one shoe orange, one shoe blue. That's yin and yang.
Yin and yang,
water,
baby.
fire, good, bad, light, dark, that type of stuff. And I see reality like that.
Me too.
And when you really intensify one area of your life, you're going to have to balance it out with another. I had that whole experience you just said for a couple of years. Then I came back to Sydney and worked like an animal in the corporate world. I know you had that similar type of setup in your life too. But really, integration is the most important thing. So when we talk about the limitations of the human experience to come to a close for this video, it's all about integrating your human experience so it can be balanced and understanding where the limitations lie so that you can bring yourself back to the center.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we try to find balance and harmony in everything that we do, we will have enough resource and enough propellant to continue to have a rich human experience for a very long period of time. And I think that's what it comes down to. Don't overexhaust anything. And realize that pain and suffering is a part of the collective and individual human experience. You're not alone, and your tribe is very, very important, and other humans are so important in your life. So, yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to close this video, and I look forward to having a great chat about the next one. We're going to dive into another deep topic about something that we find very interesting. And thanks for joining me on this one, Zac.
No worries. See you on the next video, Sim.
Thank you.